Welcome to Magnify the Maker, where we keep the focus on Jesus. We're all little makers of our ultimate maker, and this podcast is a space to glorify Him. Thanks for joining. Enjoy the episode. There's so much loss and brokenness in the world. I feel a heaviness on my chest. Sometimes I go to my phone or other things to numb it away, but it never helps. After scrolling for hours, I find myself desperately crying out to you for help. Help me replace the world's light with your light, Jesus. Just like the woman who suffered for 12 years, may my faith reach out to the hem of your garment. I know that when I desperately reach out to you, you can heal whatever I try to numb. Your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light for my path. In Jesus' name, amen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Magnify the Maker. My name is Maddie, and this is a Christian podcast where we talk everything to do with God and just to really be honest on our walk with God, because it can be very challenging at times. It can be very heavy, but we know that when we come to Jesus, He tells us and He affirms to us that His burden is light, and he eases our burden, and He gives us rest. And so we can trust Him and have faith that when we go to Him, He's not going to condemn us. He's not going to bash us. He's not going to list out all of our mistakes and what we didn't do and what we did do. He's going to fully embrace us and love us. And so that can really give us a peace when we are going through our walk with Jesus. And we think that we have to be perfect and we have to measure up to His expectation of us. But really, it's not His expectation that He places on us. It's what we expect for ourselves, or what the world expects for ourselves. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today in depth, is this concept of we have to be perfect. And when we aren't, it feels like we're a failure, and it feels very discouraging, and it can feel like you just want to give up in faith. This is when, a lot of backsliding happens, and when you just fall out of faith. And so in order to not let that happen, we have to recognize the lie that tells us that we have to be perfect. Because if we don't recognize it and we just let it continue to run rampant in our mind, it can really accumulate and grow into an action of completely separating yourself from God and giving up completely, stepping away from the faith, and not trusting God that you are loved and you are His when He says it. And so I think that this episode, I'm in full expectation that it's going to create breakthrough, and it's going to propel breakthrough in your life. And I hope that it also propels breakthrough in my life with this issue, because I think, if I'm honest, I am also struggling with this. I'm struggling with a lot of imperfect thoughts and imperfect negative judgments about myself and other people. And there's just a lot of thoughts in my head. And I think that I have been recently realizing how imperfect they are and how deceiving they can be, because they can be so little. It can just, be such a little thought in your mind that it's not super loud. It doesn't announce itself, but it interweaves into how you operate and how you think of yourself. I just feel like I've been, for a long time, I feel like I have lived my life thinking that my performance and my perfectionism is based on how much worth I have and how much value I see myself. I know that I'm a child of God, and I know that, the Bible says that I am more precious than rubies, and I am more valuable than gold and silver and all of that. But I think that the enemy can get you to secretly put your worth in other things than God. And it can be so seamless. Like, have you ever gone to church and the sermon and you're like, it kind of just feels like, okay, I'm doing everything right. Okay. Like, but in full reality, we are a people of struggle, and like we are imperfect, and God is constantly refining us. And so we're never going to be free and clear of struggle. And even if it doesn't feel like you're being refined, and even if it doesn't feel like God is working on you, there is something that He is working on. And I think that for a little bit, I was really confused at like what God was working at my heart with. And recently, it's I've realized that it's a lot of refinement in how I see myself. And if I truly believe and trust that God, when He says that I am His child and I am chosen, is that enough for me? Like, is what He says about me enough for me? Because I think that in a world full of, we are conditioned to think we are not enough until, like, and I think social media can also be not helpful in this sense. I think that it might have um, been an element that has been added in our culture that just propels this idea that we have to be perfect, and we're not perfect until we have this, until we have that, until we post this, or until it looks like we have this. And it's a very an outward appearance. And so, to be completely honest and vulnerable, I have placed a lot of my worth and my self-value that I see myself in outward appearance type of things. And there was this moment yesterday, actually, that I fully realized what God was doing. Because, like I said, for a little bit, I was just like, I wonder what God is doing in my heart right now. Because it's not that I'm struggling with anything like big sin wise. And so I think when you're on your Christian walk and you get all of the big sins out, and God delivers you from a lot of the bigger sins that you struggle with, and you don't have chains holding you back, there's another element that you go into that's like harder to find your imperfections, but then they can just like catch up with you, and you'll wonder why you feel so heavy and like not good enough all the time. I constantly feel like I'm not good enough. Even like doing God's work, sometimes I'm like, He's mad at me. Like, He's disappointed in me. I'm not good enough. And I have to do more and do this. So yesterday, I was going to do my nails. This is such like a superficial, surface level type of story. But really, it's a deeper like issue of mine. And I see things very spiritual, and I think when you do say yes to Jesus, everything from that point, you need to take it with like a grain of salt, but also be like, okay, this has spiritual elements, because we're constantly in spiritual war, and a lot of things are spiritual, and we are constantly affected from the battle of good and evil. And since God is at play and at work in our hearts, there's little things that aren't just little to Him. Like, so yesterday, I was wanting to do my nails, and I had previously got acrylics, and I was really struggling to get my acrylics off, because previously I got my acrylics on when my nails were super torn up. Like, I have been using Gel X a lot, and my nails have just been like so rugged, so torn up. And so when I got my nails done at this appointment, I got acrylic, and so I was trying to pry it off to put Gel X on, because they were outgrown. And so I was going to do red nails for Christmas, and so I was like prying off my acrylics, and they would not come off. And it hurt so bad. It hurt so bad that my fingers were shaking, and like it was the worst pain ever. and my 2 fingers actually bled, and then like 4 of my nails are just completely, like, the nail bed is like half off. Anyway, so they're like really damaged. And so I had to go to the store to get acetone to try to get them off. So I go to the store, get acetone, bring it back. I'm like soaking, and then I'm impatient because I've had them soaked for a while, and acetone is not good for your nails. So it's all like things that are just not natural for your nails, not good for your nails, but the acetone helps break down the acrylic to get them off. And so I was having them soak, and then eventually, I don't know how I got them off, but I did push through the pain. And, well, I do know how, by bleeding, and my nails are completely torn up. But yeah, so then I was like, okay, well, I have a choice to just kind of rock ugly nails for a little bit until my natural nails are strengthened, or cover it up and continue to do what I had planned and put the extension, like the plastic tips on, the Gel X on, and make it look pretty. And as I was like sitting there debating whether or not what I should do, I realized that I would rather make it look pretty on the outside than actually make it pretty underneath. And it kind of was like weird for me to realize that, because I realized that I put so much worth on my outward appearance. Like, why do I feel less than if I don't have my nails on? Why do I feel less than if I don't look a certain way? And this goes with, the way my body looks too. And there's just so much not just even physically, but like how my life looks on the outside as well. And so I think this is something that we all experience. It's just like a human experience that we have to learn, and God can help us with. But, I think deep down, there was healing that needed to take place with my nails. But I was so quick, and I just had that desire to make it look good, and not be willing to just wait it out and be happy with my natural nails and the condition of where my nails are at right now. And this can also be spiritually. Like, are you okay with being at the spot that you are right now with God? And it can feel like you want to be at a different spot, at a different season, closer with God or whatever. But it's like, the faster we can understand and accept where we are at right now, the faster healing can begin. Because if I wasn't able to accept the fact that my nails need healing, my nails are bleeding, and they're kind of gross. If I wasn't able to accept that, then healing would never be able to take place. And it would prolong the healing. I would get more Gel X on, and I would put more, acrylic on, and do it my way and make it look good. But underneath it all, I'm just prolonging healing. And I think about the story, actually, I'm going to flip to it. There's just such an emphasis on us looking perfect, and us looking, even in our Christian lives, as like perfect. And what God really wants is the imperfections in us, and for him to communicate to us that you are imperfect, and that's okay. Like, I don't see you as more valuable if you look a certain way. He actually sees you as more valuable when you take the covering off and you're like, here's my damaged self. Here is my self that needs healing. Here's my heart. Please heal it. And I think about the healing at the pool, and when this man, his whole life he spent trying to get healing. And so there is this pool that an angel would come, and whoever was first in the pool would get healing. But his healing was prolonged because he had the mentality that he wasn't good enough to, he was like always being trampled on, and he was always in this victim mentality of like, I won't be able to get healing because they are getting there first. Other people are getting there first. And he spent his whole life seeing other people getting healed and other people having this like perfect life, this ideal life. But he had spent his whole life in that weird feeling, awkward feeling of like, I'm not enough. I will never be enough. And time after time again, I try to prove to myself that I'm enough by going to the pool first, but I never get there first. Someone is always going to be better, And he spent his whole life seeing this. And so I'm going to read it and then kind of get into how we can move forward in life with a refined sense of worth, of self-esteem, of self-worth, a refined sense of where we put our identity, and how we can go about life with a better mentality of how you see yourself. So it says in John 5, it says, sometime later Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, something like that, and which is surrounded by 5 colored colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. Jesus came to him in his imperfections and in his, what it says, invalid. We can feel like we are invalid in so many different areas, and we can feel so insecure, and we can feel unequipped, not good enough, and we can wake up in life just so disabled and like paralyzed in our motivation because we don't feel good enough. We don't feel like we're offering enough, and it can be very discouraging. But what this story shows is that Jesus is the only one that can break that cycle, and Jesus gave him a refined sense of identity and a refined sense of worth. And if we put ourselves in this man's position, I'm sure that he felt he had probably such low self-esteem, so low self-worth, and it was just this repeated cycle of wanting something for himself, but feeling it was just at the cost of his mentality about himself. But I think even then, he never gave up. And so we can take that and learn from that and know that we should never give up, and we should never just quit because of our condition of how we see ourselves. And so in my life, God has really spoken this lesson recently into my life. And I think that I'm going through a season of refinement, and it's really beautiful. And I think that sometimes when you are being refined, it can kind of be hidden. Like you don't know you're being refined until God communicates it to you. Because for a while I didn't realize that I was being refined until the consequences, or I mean the aftermath of me having such negative thoughts and me not realizing that they are from the enemy. They kind of just birthed, and like I was able to actually see it because of how big they got in my brain. And because it starts so little, it starts so silent, but then they are just like a snowball effect, and it just grows and grows and grows until you're like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with, like, that is a negative thought that I think about myself. And that negative thought has been tied to my self-worth for a long time, and tied to my self-esteem for a long time, because I operate in a different way versus seeing myself how God sees me. He sees me as imperfect, and I have to be okay with being imperfect and not placing my value or my worth in if I am perfect or not. We're kind of going to the part of the podcast where we're going to be talking about the difference between self-worth and self-esteem and how we can grow our self-esteem. So first, we have to realize that self-worth never changes. Self-esteem can change. Self-worth is the intrinsic, unconditional belief in your own value as a person, while self-esteem is a more fluctuating, conditional evaluation of your abilities and worth, often based on external factors like achievements and social validation. And this also plays into, your outward appearance. Your self-esteem is conditioned on the outward things about you. And so I think that, like, self-worth, I have pretty high self-worth, but my self-esteem can fluctuate. And recently, it's been fluctuated based on my outward appearance. And then that really makes me vulnerable to thinking, when I have a thought of, I'm this, I'm that, and it's from the enemy and it's a lie, then I can start to have my self-esteem affected. And so let's break self-esteem down. Your self-esteem is your overall opinion and evaluation of yourself, including your abilities and qualities. It's influenced by both internal and external factors, such as how you perceive your success, failures, and social standing. This is conditional. It can change based on your performance, achievements, and external validation. It's fluctuating, and it can go up and down based on life circumstances, like job performance or relationship status. And it's the judgment that you make about yourself. And there's just a struggle. And the enemy, he knows that if he can start to get you to think that your identity is placed in how you perform, then he can get you to have very low self-esteem. The other day, God brought me to Ecclesiastes, and it just is this truth that, like, everything is meaningless. Like, nothing that if we base our worth and our identity on anything other than God, it will be destroyed. It will lead to nothing and destruction and negativity because of the truth that everything is meaningless. Ecclesiastes, I'm just going to read the whole chapter of chapter 2, and then we'll close this episode out because I think that we've kind of covered everything. We'll go over the summary of the concepts, but chapter 2 says, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands have done, which is literally when he is recognizing where his self-esteem is, because remember, self-esteem is the judgment that you place on yourself and the evaluation that you have of yourself. When he is doing this, everything was meaningless. He says, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. He was trying to find out what was good to him. And what is good is not found in anything other than God. And he finds this out because he has all of the achievements. He's performed so well. He has everything that his heart, desires, and that on the outside it looks beautiful. He has it all. But then he still says everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. His life looked like he gained so much, but he still feels in his heart, when he's evaluating his self-esteem, he's realizing that everything that he has added to his life is meaningless. And then in verse 12 it says, then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom, and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks in darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless, for the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. And then verse 17, it goes into toil being meaningless. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish, yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain. Even at night their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth, to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So this is just going to show that we can either live a life of working for ourselves and working for achievements to heighten our self-esteem and how we see ourselves, or we can work to give it all to God, who really has the ultimate self-worth and self-esteem, and we can start to live a life of trying to build his self-esteem and his worth, and realizing that he is within us. Our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. He dwells inside of us. So it's not that we are building ourselves up, but we are building him up in us. And then last night, which is so crazy, as I was reading my book, it literally talked about this. And this book is so good. I recommend it to anyone, but it's called Try Softer, and it's by, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Andy Kolber. But she says, we didn't get to choose the dynamics of our childhood or ask for relational wounds we may have experienced. This is one reason I love to teach people about their WOT, which she goes on to explain. The WOT she's saying it stands for window of tolerance. So I love to teach people about their window of tolerance, their bodies, and how God will walk beside them on their journeys. We have the power to change our futures. One of the best parts of learning to open myself up to God and allowing him to sit with me in my joy and grief is this. I have learned to see myself as God sees me. God has many beautiful names for each of us, but one that came out of the season where I re-experienced God as safe is beloved. This term has become sacred to me because it represents the connectedness and growth that have allowed me to try softer in life. It reminds me that God is the most loving, tender parent I could have. Years ago, I picked up Henry Nouwen's book, Life of the Beloved, and it changed the trajectory of my thinking about my own identity. Nouwen, I think that's how you pronounce it, I don't know, challenges readers to see themselves as united with the identity of Christ. In Mark 1, John baptizes Jesus, and then a voice from heaven says, "You are my son, my beloved son, with you I am well pleased." As my friend Karen Gonzalez notes, God affirms Jesus' value even before he had accomplished a thing in his earthly ministry. Or as we think of ourselves as God's beloved, perhaps we can borrow from the relationship between Jesus and John, the disciple whom Jesus loved. I wonder what it would be like for you to imagine that God thinks of you in this way, no matter how your day goes, what you do or don't accomplish, where you fail or succeed, or how scared or overwhelmed you might feel. You would know he is the one who lovingly watches out for you, who is delighted just to be near you. That's the goodness embedded in your very existence, dear reader. During our hardest, scariest times, whether our bodies feel stressed and jumpy or sluggish and slow, God is there to reassure us that we are not defined by our best days or our worst days. We are his beloved. And it can feel like we're reading Ecclesiastes and just being like, then what's the point of life, you know? But the point is, the hand of God is how we build up our self-esteem and how we see ourselves. And that's the only thing that we can rely on. And so last night when I was meditating, it was really sweet. My fingers, because I told you about my nails and how just like damaged they were and how they hurt really bad. And I was meditating, closing my eyes, and I could feel the heartbeat in my fingers. And I'm going to like get emotional, but God said to me, my heartbeat is in your hands. And what that meant to me was like, not that we are, the way that we live is conditioned on like if God lives or not. That's not how I took it. But it's the fact that like I have the heartbeat of Jesus in me. and I am beholding him. I am having it in my hands. His heartbeat is in my hands, and I have the choice to give him life in my life or not. I have the choice of what life to give. If I give life to my negative thoughts and my imperfect thoughts and how I see myself, I have the choice. I have the heartbeat in my hands to give life or death to that. When we are feeling this awkward tension, we can just be so desperate for contentment and being content with, that's what our heart really wants. Like, we just want to be content with ourselves and with other people and God. And one of my study notes in the Bible, it says, what brings contentment? It says, concluding that life is meaningless, the teacher advised taking comfort in daily pleasures, eat, drink, and be merry. He seems to say, work hard and play hard. Do whatever God enables you to do. His general pessimism, however, suggests that he was unable to follow his own advice. Deep thinking people often find that simple pleasures fail to satisfy. A better answer comes in the conclusion of the book. Contentment comes through a life of faith and obedience. And then another study note, it says, what's wrong with pleasure? It says, pleasure is part of God's design and as such is good, but pleasure alone does not give meaning to life. If pursued as an end of itself, it is short-lived and superficial. When not enjoyed for the glory of God, it serves as best as an anesthetic to the harsh realities of life. So if you are basing your accomplishments, your pleasure, your outward appearance, the condition of your heart even, or like where you are mentally, if you are placing that on how you see yourself and your self-worth and your self-esteem, you will find that you will have a very fluctuating self-esteem. And so how we can get that to be not as fluctuating is rely on God, because Jesus is firm and he is the solid rock that we can build our life on, and so we can build our self-esteem on as well. I can't believe that next week is the last episode of season 6. I'm really excited to announce something super fun for the next year upcoming. I'm really excited for what God has in store for 2026. There's a lot, and I just want to tell everything, but I can't announce everything yet. So I will see you next episode, next week, next Friday.